The cargo bay of the stellar meridian hummed with the usual symphony of a working starship, hydraulic hisses, the clang of metal on metal, and the occasional curse in half a dozen languages. Tara knelt beneath the starboard plasma conduit, her calloused hands working the molecular welder with practiced ease. Sparks cascaded like tiny stars, illuminating her grease-smeared face. She didn't notice the small shadow at first. Vic crouched near the maintenance cart, his golden eyes fixed on Tara with an intensity that would have unnerved most species. The young Kasharn was barely 3 solar cycles old, still a cub by his people's standards, but already his predatory instincts were sharp. His slate-gray fur bristled with curiosity as he watched the human work, his triangular ears swiveling to catch every sound she made. The Kasharn were apex hunters, evolved on a death world where only the strongest survived to adulthood. They were respected throughout the galaxy as warriors, mercenaries, and trackers. Their cubs were taught from birth that weakness was death, that hesitation was fatal. Yet here, on this mixed-species vessel, Vic found himself fascinated by something his instincts couldn't quite categorize. Humans were strange. Tara set down the welder and reached for her toolkit. That's when she saw him, the small predator cub no higher than her knee, pawing through her equipment with the careful deliberation of someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. She suppressed a smile. "Looking for something, little hunter?" she asked, her voice gentle. Vic's head snapped up, his pupils dilating. He chittered something in rapid Kasharn that Tara's translator struggled to parse, something about fixing and helping and strong-like. "You?" The cub's eyes settled on the heavy torque wrench lying at the edge of her cart. It was a brutal thing, designed for maximum leverage on stubborn bolts weighing at least 5 kilograms. Vic approached it with the careful respect a predator shows a sleeping rival. Tara watched, intrigued, as the cub wrapped both arms around the wrench's handle. His small claws extended for grip, his haunches tensed, and with a grunt that was almost comical coming from something so small, he lifted. The wrench rose perhaps 2 centimeters before Vic's legs began to shake. His tail lashed in frustration, his ears flattened against his skull, the universal Kasharn sign of determination bordering on stubbornness. He wouldn't quit. Couldn't quit. To show weakness, even at this age, even in play, was against everything his species stood for. Most beings would have laughed. Some would have taken the wrench away, told the cub it was too dangerous. A few might have scolded him for touching tools he didn't understand. Tara just smiled. She'd served with Kasharn warriors before. She'd seen them fight with broken bones, seen them drag themselves kilometers with fatal wounds to complete a mission. Their culture was built on strength, on never showing vulnerability, on the belief that adversity was merely an opportunity to prove one's worth. It was, she reflected, not so different from humanity's own stubborn refusal to acknowledge when something was impossible. "You've got good form," Tara said, kneeling beside Vic. "But that wrench wasn't built for solo work. Even I need help with it sometimes." Vic's ears perked up and he turned to look at her with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. His translator caught up. "You need help?" "Sure," Tara said easily. "Why do you think tools like this have long handles?" "So 2 people can work together. Makes us both stronger." It was a lie, of course. She could handle that wrench just fine on her own. But she'd learned long ago that sometimes the truth was less important than the lesson. Vic considered this, his tail slowing its agitated swishing. Among his people, weakness was individual. Strength was solitary. The strong survived. The weak perished. But this human was suggesting something different, a strange alchemy where 2 beings might become greater than the sum of their parts. "You help Vic?" the cub asked, his claws still gripping the wrench with admirable determination. "If you help me," Tara replied. "That's how it works." She positioned herself on one side of the wrench, gesturing for Vic to take the other. Together they lifted. The wrench rose smoothly, steadily, held aloft by 4 hands instead of 2. Vic's eyes widened in something that might have been wonder. They carried it together to the plasma conduit, where a stubborn coupling nut had been resisting Tara's efforts for the better part of an hour. She guided Vic's grip, showed him how to brace his feet, explained the concept of leverage in terms simple enough for a 3-cycle-old to grasp. "Now," she said. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They pulled together. The nut groaned, resisted, then suddenly broke free with a satisfying clunk. Vic chittered in excitement. bouncing on his haunches in a way that was definitely not dignified for a predator species. Tara laughed, a warm, genuine sound that echoed through the cargo bay. She reached out and ruffled the fur between Vic's ears, a gesture that would have gotten her hand bitten off by an adult Kasharn. But Vic just leaned into the touch, purring in a way his people would never admit their species could. "Good work, engineer," Tara said. "Couldn't have done it without you." It was another lie. But it was also a truth that transcended facts. Across the galaxy, species looked at humanity with confusion, sometimes fear. Humans were weak by most physical standards. No natural weapons, no armor, no venom or enhanced senses. They came from a moderate world, faced moderate challenges, and should have been moderate in all things. But they had something else. Something that made them collect strays from 1,000 worlds, that made them kneel beside frightened cubs and teach them that strength could be shared. They had this strange, irrational belief that anything could be fixed, anyone could be helped, and that the measure of power wasn't in standing alone but in lifting others. Vic would remember this day. Decades later, when he was a decorated warrior serving in the Galactic Defense Fleet, he would remember the human who taught him that the strongest steel was forged in partnership, not isolation. He would remember how Tara smiled when he succeeded, not at him but with him, and he would teach his own cubs the strange, wonderful human philosophy that sometimes the bravest thing a predator can do is ask for help. Tara gathered her tools, the plasma conduit now humming smoothly. Vic remained at her side, his small form shadowing her movements with determined mimicry. As they worked together in companionable silence, the stellar meridian sailed on through the void, carrying aboard it the quiet revolution of a human who taught a predator cub that strength multiplied was better than strength hoarded. In the end, that was the most terrifying thing about humans. They made you want to be better.